Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our lesson, Illustration and Cartooning. Today, we'll be discussing caricatures. Now, before we start with this lesson, let's do a quick review of everything that we have learned in Module 1 so far. So, we have discussed realistic facial proportions, realistic body proportions, expressions, gestures, the foundations of lines, shapes, and forms, and eventually, we will conclude this module with caricatures. Caricatures are rooted in realism, which is why we discussed realism first and foremost. You cannot create an effective caricature if you don't know the realistic proportions of a human body, because the only way to exaggerate and to push deeper into the topic of caricature, you need to have the basic foundations of what proportions are. So, what are caricatures? Caricatures are exaggerations by means of often ludicrous distortion of parts or characteristics. Caricature is a form of drawing with the intention of making someone look exaggerated by picking a specific feature and inflating it in order to make that defining feature more noticeable than it really is and characterizes the person in question or the drawing subject. Now, caricature, according to Brennan, 1985, is a graphical coding of facial features that seeks to paradoxically to be more like a face than the face itself. Meaning, it tries to represent the person by picking at the features and exaggerating it or bloating it up compared to just drawing them one to one. So let's say if you know someone who has a prominent nose, in caricature, that nose of theirs would be enlarged to the point of comedic effect in order to represent them. Usually, caricatures are the details that you see immediately in a person. So, caricature amplifies the significant information or details while reducing the less relevant details. This creates a distortion that satisfies, as per Brennan, the beholder's mental model of what is unique about a particular face. You know those moments when you try to recall someone and sometimes you can think na, basta kabalo ko, dako siya, kabalo ko na, grabe iyahang eye bags, kabalo ko baga ang iyahang eyebrows. Like if you try to remember them, you can't really recall their face, you can't really recall their um name baka how or any defining feature or not really defining feature, but like what their face actually is. But you remember they have a boxy face. You think they would fit right into Minecraft or Roblox with how boxy their jaws are. In caricature, that would be the feature that would be exaggerated. Now, if we talk about the nature of caricatures, there are six. We will discuss each of them individually, but first let's lay them out. First is the exaggeration of individualization. Next, pardon for the grammatical errors or inconsistencies, but this is what was laid out in the book naman. So, yan, first is the exaggeration. Next, a caricature reveals a character. A caricature exaggerates the defects. A caricature is humorous. A caricature is a simplification of an identity. And a caricature must have recognition. Now, let's go over them one by one. So first is the exaggeration of individualization. Now let's touch on etymology for a quick while. The word caricature came from the Italian word caricare, which means to load, surcharge, or exaggerate. So from that meaning alone, we can guess that caricature is to exaggerate. So it is the grotesque of ludicrous representation of people or things by exaggeration of their most striking characteristic or feature. So let's look at the example here. We have Tom Cruise. Now, some people say now he is an attractive man, he has the good proportions, but with caricature, you just really have to look for the thing that strikes you the most. Unang tingin pa lang, we can see his teeth. Now, of course, it might be because his teeth are so bright, and then we start moving up. So, okay, he has a fairly prominent nose, as is common so Western features, and then his eyes are very small. His eyebrows, kind of bushy, and then he has a wide um forehead, wide or high ba yan yung term. Um, his like yung parang wrinkles sa side ng face niya, that's also very prominent. So, dahil dyan, nag-feature yung jaw niya. So, the caricature artist, took that and drew it down. So, yan, makita mo, exaggerate talaga yung teeth, which is, the point naman of caricature, to exaggerate the proportions or the parts. So, yan, same with the eyes, gipaggamay gud siya. Kind of played it on, medyo cross-eye ay, not really cross-eye, about don't say term na, but like, hindi straight ahead yung pagtingin ng eyes. It may be because Tom Cruise probably looking at multiple photographers during the taking of this picture, tas nalagay sa caricature. So, ayan, his jaw, his hair, his eyebrows, his forehead, all of those are taken by the artist and placed on their drawing. Now, caricatures deliberately distort a portrait and focuses on the defects, the humor, and the simplification, which are the other natures of caricature. Now, do note, caricatures distort a portrait, but it does not remove its identity because a caricature should reveal a character. Now, exaggeration is a very harsh word alongside the term distort. So let's look at it in a different way. Caricature highlights a character's feature or personality. This reinforces stereotype attributes that we make on the basis of a person's appearance. Now, do note sometimes caricatures can be um how do you say can be used to degrade someone. Caricatures can be used to stereotype, so always be cautious. Remember, sometimes caricature is just the tool, it's not the thing that's hurting, or rather caricature can be used for good and bad. Never use it to insult someone unless you're working on a satire. Remember, satire is not the same as insulting people, or being satirical is not the same as being insulting. There are nuances to that. So whenever you're making caricatures, just be careful that you're not being stereotypical, you're not being sexist ba, racist, ageist, all of those things that you have to take note as a decent member of society. So sometimes caricature offer no character analysis at all. It's not an imagery, it's not filled with symbolisms. It's just the drawing itself of a person being exaggerated. So let's look at this example here. Rihanna, sa case ng caricature na ito, gi-exaggerate yung forehead niya because she has like a round forehead. Um Even though her eyebrows aren't exactly shaped that way, it was intentionally exaggerated. Same then with her chin, intentionally gijot out pa siya more. And then maybe because her hairstyle gave her entire shape a bit of a height, the artist compensated by exaggerating the forehead and then placed the hair on top of it. So there are other ways to do this, but we will discuss that. But let's move on to the next nature, which is to exaggerate the defects. So caricaturists aim in the greatest resemblance as much as possible of the whole person, while also intentionally making fun or mocking them. They intentionally disproportionately increase and emphasize the defects. So this is where caricaturists often called artistic bullying, but still remember, bullying is bad. Don't have to tell you guys why. But yan, like, usually it's a criticism, or yan, judger ka kung naga-caricature ka. And we can usually see that by the points that you choose to exaggerate. So for example, here, well-known artist Steve Buscemi, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. If you've seen Adam Sandler movies, he's probably there. At the top of my head, I can recall him from the Grown Ups film. So this artist, we know, unang tingin pa lang ni Steve Buscemi, I'm currently covering the caricature with my hand para di ako mabias sa anong output. I know first and foremost, it's his eyes. Nag-stand out talaga. Para siya permi katulgon, bago siya mata, or yan, that puffy look. Next, he has a really high forehead. padulungay balding na, as you can see, but then again, he is aging, so that's normal. Very thin nose bridge, and his lips. He has a very big, I guess, yung mouth niya, prominent yung teeth niya. He has this very saggy look, which might be because of the wrinkles, his other facial features. A lot of his features are pointing down, so to speak. It's very bloated na saggy. I'm using, yes, very judgmental words, but I'm just describing what I would see or what I would guess based on the feel of the image. Now, currently removing my hand from my screen so I can see the caricature. So, yan, we can see that the caricature is really emphasized on those features. So, first we have the very droopy eyes, the very puffy eye bags ba yan? Next, we have his mouth. So the caricaturists decided to really exaggerate it. Apat lang yung ngipin na binigay sa kanya. Yung mouth, mura gid jut out, gid siya, very large mouth. Um, to balance it out, githin out sa artist yung nose bridge niya. And then also really compensated with the wrinkles, really pushed the hairline back up to really show na like this is an exaggeration. They also made his face longer. Remember when I said na parang nagdudroop yung features niya. So dahil dyan, ginawa ng artist, parang gi-drag down yung face niya. Now, caricature should also be humorous. It's not always the case. Usually, when you accurately portray the trends of faces through metric inaccuracy, they will look funny. Now, what makes a caricature funny is when you recognize the subject despite the distorted image. This can, rather, caricatures can also be witty visual allusions because it really shows what features the artists are focusing in. So, are you the type to focus on the face shape, the eyes, the hair? So, it really shows the difference between the artists and the details they choose to nitpick. So the contrast between the caricature's distortion and ideals of beauty can provoke laughter either out of embarrassment or fear. So sometimes, as per this example, this is boardwalk caricature. You might have seen videos of people just paying an artist a quick buck, sitting there to model for them, and the artist would try to quickly draw them in a caricature form. Now, sometimes some of them would laugh the at how distorted their face gets. Like, for example, this woman here, she looks like an average American, and we look at the drawing. The artist decided to really emphasize her nose, the cheeks. I personally don't think she's sagging that much in terms of the face, but the artist really pushed into that. Also made her head very big to emphasize her hair. So yan. So do note that humor isn't really a feature of caricature. It's a reaction of it, and sometimes caricatures aren't humorous. Caricatures can be criticisms, which have to be taken seriously, or sometimes they're just there to poke fun at people. Now, it's up to you to laugh or to not laugh, kasi sometimes caricature can be bullying, so it's really up to you and your moral code. So caricature is also the simplification. Now, with the realism, you have a lot of details to consider. With caricature, it's this is where you would identify the details you will keep to, well, represent the person. This is why starting with realism is very important. At least we know the foundation, we know the baseline, we know what's supposed to be there, and we can choose to keep it or ignore it, rather than we don't know what's there and then we intentionally did not put that kasi hindi natin alam na nandyan siya dapat. So, yan, with the nature of caricature, simplification talks about how caricatures usually lack information about the color and shading. Caricatures are typically black and white or drawn with pencil, charcoal. Caricatures have to be simplified because adding too much detail makes them look frozen. Adding too much details kind of shows na like, okay, they're maybe stagnant. They're just like stagnant enough kasi na detail lahat. But if you try to keep it minimal, or not really minimal, but try to highlight the important parts, you might find yourself trying to exaggerate or compensate through motion, expression, gestures. Yan. Now, simplification is not exactly essential if you would look back on, for example, this one. This isn't really very simple. There's a lot of details, shading, cross-hatching. But the idea is, it's, it's not exactly simple, but in its nature, it simplified the actor. Now, a caricature, to be effective, has to be recognizable. So in this example alone, we know that it's Aquaman. Then we know na this is the actor Jason Momoa, if I'm correct. I'm not really good with Hollywood names. So yan, caricature must represent the subject accurately. It's the observation of patterns, and um, it is the observation of patterns that makes the person unique. Now, there are two problems when it comes to the nature of caricature. One is the object constancy problem, and next, the homogeneity problem. The object constancy problem talks about the issue where sometimes the object's appearance can vary according to the viewpoint. If you look at an object or at a subject, how you view them really depends on you and your viewpoint. Caricature acknowledges that there is an infinite source of representation. So it's up to you as the artist to pick a source. Next is the homogeneity problem. Faces typically have the same basic parts. We have the same set of eyes, same general proportion when it comes to the nose, mouth, ear placement, where the shoulders should be aligned, the ratio of your forearm, the ratio of your thighs. That's why we talked about proportions in the previous weeks. Usually, this becomes a problem. You might know the term same face syndrome, wherein even though you try to compensate with details, it's still the same face. That is the homogeneity problem. You need to find a way to be able to represent the subtle differences in order to make the distinction between two similar objects. You know how if you've met twins in real life, of course, unang tingin pa lang, wow, ang similar ninyo. But upon closer inspection, there is actually a difference. I mean, it depends on the types of twins that you have encountered in your lives. But so far, in the sets of twins that I have encountered, upon first look, you know, they're the same. But if you look at them more, you can see na, oh, you actually have a rounder face. Oh, your eyes are actually like bigger than that of your twin, or um, your nose is a bit thinner than your twin. So like you will look or you will find the details that would eventually make them recognizable. Now let's look at an example here. So we all know Mr. Bean, either as the cartoon, and honestly, casting Rowan Atkinson really checked off the identity of Mr. Bean as the character. So Mr. Bean is silly and very unconventional, but his face, it's very distinct. What do you think are the facial qualities that Rowan Atkinson has? Now, I will give you guys time to think about that. I guess you can pause the video if you want. So, yan. But first, okay, so what are some of the distinctive facial qualities? For me, first and foremost, his nose. It's big. It's pretty wide, very defined nose bridge. Next, his eyebrows, very bushy, always in an upward arch. Like even if he's frowning, it still managed to be in an upward arch. Next is his very wide parang lips niya, like if he smiles mo pinch gud iyang cheeks. Remember when I discussed yung expressions, if one part of your face moves in a certain direction, of course the other parts get squished and everything. He also has this parang shadow ba yung term dyan? Yung parang beard na hindi fully na shave. And then of course lastly parang yung mga moles niya. You can also take into account his wrinkles, his hairstyle. Let's not focus much on the costume kasi yung outfit pwede yan araw-araw magbago. Let's look on the face. So ayan, if you would look at the caricatures, based on Rowan Atkinson, you can see na yan, nose, first and foremost, um, tawag nito, in the second art, nasa center talaga yung nose niya, which is, fair, center naman din yan ng face ng tao. But you can see na it's really made with dominant, sorry, it's dominantly made with circles. Same with the eyebrows. They're very much arched. We can also take into account his eyes. They're very big. You can see na his eyelids and parang yung under ng eyes niya, they're also defined. So the artist really took note of that. The cheekbones, the mole, and also his ears. That's also something that I did not acknowledge in the previous image. So maybe looking at different sources might point out that his ears stick out, and that's what the caricature artist applied here. Now, if you would look at the difference between the face and the body is pretty simple, pretty generic. You can put a different face on there and it would fit. So this is why observing the face is important. It is the defining quality. Now let's look at the cartoon. As you can see, medyo similar din yung features niya, but since it's a cartoon, it has to be animated, na overly simplify siya. So that's one difference of an animated cartoon with a caricature. Caricatures are expected to be still portraits, so yeah, that's why they can get away with doing a lot of details. Animated cartoons, they have to be redrawn over and over and over, so medyo mas simplify siya. Now, here's a little trick when it comes to making caricatures. Once you get the general idea, once you start drawing it out, try to exaggerate and think of it in percentages. I mean, that's one way. First, you can exaggerate. You can pick a part of a person and exaggerate it. For the first drawing here, the artist decided to elongate the entire face. And somehow, of course, the features are still kept. So yan, the nose, the mustache, the eyes, the hat, it's still there. For the second drawing, the artist decided to exaggerate on the double chin. So you can see there's a bit of a double chin in our model. And the artist decided to play along with it, and they bloated up his face by making the double chin the first, like the distinctive quality. But as you can see, since they've increased the percentage of space na nakuha ng chin, the space left for the features were greatly reduced or are greatly reduced. So ayan, naging parang nag-cinch na silang lahat up top. And then next, for the third example, the artist decided to go for a wide approach. So ayan, medyo nag-stretch out na noon yung features. But despite that, we know that it's still referencing the same person because of their defining qualities. Now, here is another example of caricature. I guess the boardwalk caricature is a very good example of fast caricature done by very skilled artists kasi they only have like a few minutes to do this. They have a good eye for what are the defining features. Let's look at this, the first caricature, the one with the baby. Remember during our study with proportions, babies typically have very big features. They eventually grow into their features. So they are very disproportionate if you really look at babies. So yeah, and the artist decided to really enlarge the head, enlarge the face. Babies typically have small noses, so ayan, ang liit ng nose niya. And then, ayan, ears, face, and then the small body. So next here, so yan, they're drawing the man and the woman. The difference here is that they're colored, so alangan mas daghan silang time. Now with boardwalk caricature or caricature in general, minsan or rather sometimes there is a template for artists. Like by default, I will draw with this face shape until a person with a very defined face shape like comes and asks to be drawn. I will typically draw eyes like this until a person with a very defined eye shape comes and asks to be drawn, and vice versa. Now, I know for those who typically draw, some of you might be aware that you would resort to those types of familiar features. So, be careful lang. Try to practice drawing other features para the moment na you have to draw someone with different features, at least di mo makalitan. Kumbaga, here is another example. So, ayan, the artist decided to exaggerate the differences in their eyes. So, the girl has larger eyes than the guy. So, ayan, exaggerate niya. Really, the artist decided to really push the eyes to be a small size para sa lalaki and compensated by making his eyebrows higher. Same with the girl. So, gipadako iyahang eyes, so medyo gi-pinch down ang iyahang nose. So this is how the balance of caricature works. So I guess that is all for our discussion with caricature. Um by the end of today, hopefully, I can get a video up of me demonstrating the percentage tip that I discussed with one of the pictures that can hopefully help you for your summative and for our future lessons in Module 2. Now, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to message me in Teams. Yan. So thank you everyone for listening to this video. I really do hope na mag-study mo sa caricature because this topic will be in our summative sa lecture. So that is all. Take care and have a safe day. Goodbye everyone.